God damn it. Yeah. We were in Amsterdam, was like, we need to take some pictures. Yeah, just turns.
I like it.
Good
Couple
afternoon.
couple things as we're getting started here. We're waiting for people to hop on. Something related to what we're going to talk about today, but later this week, we've actually got a webinar with Monica White, who is a VP over at Florida Credit Union, to talk about how to investigate romance scams and financial crimes. So I thought that would be kind of interesting to speak to. We'll talk a little about that later. And also, as we've got some people logging on now, we're giving away a free seat to one of our training classes. So anybody that's hopping on, you got a fancy QR code here, and I'll put a link in the chat in just a minute to make sure we get everybody some access to that. We got a few people still logging in. So as people are hanging on here, how's your morning going so far? Your afternoon, your evening? You're in London today?
Yeah, I'm in London, so this is like almost, it's almost 7 here. So it's in the evening, but it's been a beautiful day. So it was nice to end my day almost by doing this. So
yeah, well, we appreciate you spending some time with us. I know as we got people logging in, we've got people coming in from all over the world, which is pretty neat. They want to hear your story, and I'm sure, have plenty of questions to ask, and I'll try to filter some of those throughout. But I appreciate you hanging out with us at night over in London. I'm in the Chicago area, so it's nice middle of the day and freezing cold, kind of rainy here. If for those of you that are hopping on now, you've got a few different options to interact with us. So when you get bored with me, real easy for you to use the chat feature. We've seen a lot of your messages coming in. Cecilia is able to see all of these, so she can kind of see where you're logging in from and some of your questions. So we've got Michigan, Panama, Georgia, California. I saw another London.
Hey.
Pretty cool. We've got some fans on here. I'm going to put up a quick poll before we get kicked off and kind of give a little intro to what we're going to talk about. I'm curious how many people have actually seen Netflix Tinder Swindler. So if you guys get a second here, you've got up on your screen a quick little poll. And we got a lot of votes coming in.
Oh no, I can't vote.
I'll show you everybody here. This is I need a drum roll for you so you can see the answer here. Let me share these results with everybody so we can all see. No. So how many people have watched? We've got, but 39% of you all have homework as soon as you get off our call today. How many times have you watched this documentary?
Oh God, 3, 4. Yeah, it's almost traumatic to see it. So I think the third time I had to walk away from some parts. It's mostly the romantic parts I have to walk away from.
Right.
Where I talk about the kiss and those type of things. Then I walk away.
That's what I'm interested in as we kick off, to kind of give everybody some background. First of all, if you haven't watched Cecilia star on the Tinder Swindler, I don't know what you've been doing. So you either haven't stolen your friend's Netflix password to use yet, or you've been too busy working. So take some time to watch that, get some more context. But really what we're going to talk about today, or my goal today, is to understand what's the impact of financial crime, of romance scam, of what we'll talk a little bit about this, but almost abuse, right, in a relationship and manipulation, and what that looks like. We've got hundreds of investigators from law enforcement, from banks, from financial institutions, and people are just interested. And what I thought was really neat when I reached out to Cecilia is when you think about the financial crime, you think about this romance scam, and people are looking at Simon, right, who's our con man here, to thinking, well, he must be manipulative, he must be bold and courageous and confident and the strong person. But really, when you think about any of these situations, that to me, the strongest people are people like you, who are willing to get on a Netflix documentary, get on a call with me, and basically kind of open up your personal life, your dating life, your romantic life, and then when you were vulnerable enough to be exposed to this scam. So that's really my first thought, is to kind of pass stuff to you. And what was it like going from being in this relationship and looking for people to date and hang out with and work, you know, you're a professional or you have a job, and then all of a sudden you're starring on Netflix in a week. So what's that transition like?
I think for a lot of people, I think if you love your work, your normal working life as I do, it becomes like your savior. So yes, it's a black and white where you know it's coming and you're almost waiting for it to come. And everyone is saying, and we got like notions that this was going to be big and huge and that it was an amazing documentary. And we're like, okay, let's just see. But I think for me, work has just been a very safe space and somewhere where I've been loving just having my normal life.
Right.
So when I've been telling people I've been shooting a documentary, they were like, they thought that I was just an actress, that I wasn't like, it was my life story. So when they got to know now that it was me and then they got very surprised, because I don't think it's actually that normal maybe to have that kind of the big scene that I got from that documentary.
So when it comes out, I'm sure there's some anxiety associated with that, but are you like, all right, it's being released today, I want to watch this? Or was it, I don't want to have to relive that experience again? Because what I thought, and this must have been difficult, but I'm curious how you did this, is you watch the documentary, you can really see your genuine raw emotion in the beginning of how you felt in a relationship. But at that point, you had already known what the end result was. What was that like, to kind of put yourself in different, I guess, silos of time?
It was horrible. I think that was the toughest thing they asked of us, and that's what Felicity and Bernie, who like directed and produced it, said, that they had to ask us to actually look back in time and talk in real time, and especially for me, that I had to go into very detail on, like, you know, the kisses and what you felt, and the romantic was like something I never wanted to go back on. And how many have to go back in that kind of detail and talk about your abuser, as I call him now, like in that type of way.
Right.
So that was incredibly hard. And to see, it's a very well made documentary, but for us it felt like we were actresses, that they had to ask us, you know, you have to go back as an actor, you know, and okay, how did it feel? And you have to go back to those happy times, and you don't want to do that, but you had to because they said, the audience, you guys need to feel what we felt at the time.
Yeah, I think you did a great job of that. One thing I wish there was more context to, as we get into kind of what the scam actually was. And as we're having this dialogue, you know, forgetting that we got hundreds of people here watching, if anybody has specific questions or topics that you want us to discuss, send them in.
Yeah.
Not going to speak for Cecilia, but she has been just incredible and kind of an open book as far as her experience. And that's really why we wanted to have this platform. So if you have anything specific you want us to get into, let us know. But the one context I felt like was missing, and you discussed it, but to put people in the mindset of when you got to a point where you were either taking out loans or adding somebody as a signature on the credit card, before you got to that point, what was your relationship like? What was the context? And we haven't really given an overview of what the actual incident was, but I want to put people in the mindset of, you're in a relationship with somebody. What was the extent of that relationship before it became a problem?
I think like it was as a lot of other relationships, but I have to go back and like, you fall in love and I'm a person, like everyone's different, you know, and
Right.
like I fall quickly, and I've been reflecting on this. It was special with Simon, but that's how I am as a person, that I fall very quickly. And if I feel something is right, and it just felt very right with him, but he's the kind of person that makes you feel that things are right. So it was like daily FaceTime calls. It was like good morning messages, good night messages. Saw him several times. Like he was traveling, that was part of his job, but the ending was always, as I said, like when I look back now in 2018, even though I was almost 30, but I felt it was like I'd never been in that type of relationship where it's proper love bombing,
Right.
which I never experienced that kind of way before. So he did that, and I can see that afterwards, and that he is very good at being the type of person you really want. So he was always like trying to be the kind of person that you would want him to be. He's very calculated, you know. So if you said that you love evenings at home, we would spend evenings at home, you know. So because I wanted the kind of normalized life with him, because he was doing all these crazy things, you know, that he was putting out on social media. But so when I was hanging out with him, we were just at the apartment in Amsterdam. We didn't go out and party. We didn't go out for fancy dinners. We didn't do any of that. So, because I wanted to get to know him. And he was, as I said, with me, he was very vulnerable. And for a woman, a lot of the times, it's sometimes difficult to get a man to open up and to meet a guy that was, you felt that he was very honest about the good parts of his life and the bad stuff. And it happened very quickly. It became deep very quickly. And of course, that could have been a warning sign, but yeah, I hadn't met any psychopaths before in my life. So
yeah, I'm sure plenty of people listening here or watching can agree.
Yeah.
I think what's neat, so as we kind of go through this, for people who haven't watched, right, the documentary, or just kind of listening for the first time, the bias that you have, for those of us that have watched it, you know, you're watching a documentary because something happened, right? There's a problem. So when you go into it, and a lot of people here are talking about, Debbie mentions, I saw his narcissistic personality. One of the things, though, I feel like when we watch it afterwards, we know to look for something, right? And from your perspective, like anybody, I can just ask this question. You guys can just type in the chat, just give me a yes. Has anybody here ever gone on a first date or multiple dates? And what did you call them before? Some psychopaths? Anybody have to go on one date and then immediately decide not to go on a second one? Or it took multiple dates. We got a lot of people saying yes right away. Red flag. Yes. Yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah.
But as I have to say, he is just very, very good at what he's doing. And I
agree.
I think we'll come into that. Like, what helped me is just realizing that these type of people are everywhere, and some of them are very good at what they're doing, and some might be showing their true colors a little bit. But I feel no matter what, if you didn't see it, you don't deserve this happening to you, no matter what.
Right. Yeah.
It's all like, and that's my end game with like trying to talk about this. Yes, we as victims, we fucked up. We trusted the wrong. Sorry that I cursed. I know that's not. It's you can like we do wrong things, and we do things we shouldn't have done. But it doesn't mean that this crime that they're committing is okay to do. That's what I mean. They make you do things you shouldn't have done. And that's what's so clever about it. It isn't attached to their name. Yeah. That's the grand stuff that he did. Nothing is attached to his name. So he is kind of free. Right. He paid us back, you know. So, and he never did. But that's the glory of it, you know. It's kind of words against words at this point. And that what makes it difficult.
Well, I think that's an important message, right? When I ask that question, and some people, you know, you go on one date and you know, not going to happen, but what keeps you in a relationship? And you listed all of these things you were looking for, right? Somebody was vulnerable and trusting, and there's no reason not to believe them at some point. And it's,
as I say, with this type of fraud that he did, it started small. And I have to say, it wasn't that he was a boyfriend asking for money.
Right.
It ends up, of course, being about money. But when I look back on the WhatsApp chat, it's a medal of money and love. And I love you, and the car doesn't work. And for me, money meant security in the end. He was very clever at mixing love and security with money. And that if they first get you, when you first got me to take up that Amex card for his security, which wasn't money that I took up. I didn't view it as that. And I would get the money back because we said he was. So it was for security. When it gets labeled as security, instead of, I need money, baby, can you hand me over some money? You don't have the pressure and the same type of urgency and the same type of threats. And I know a lot of people make fun of him now, you know, oh, Peter's down and my enemy, which we can laugh about. But at the point in time, I really believe there was enemies. So we can laugh about it now because we know there are no enemies. But think about if you put yourself in my situation where you actually thought it was enemies. You thought there was someone after him, and you can laugh about it now. Who would be after this man, you know? But I really thought he was in danger. And and a lot of people would say I would never do that to help my boyfriend and I would just let him be. But I was like, what kind of relationship do you have? And I was,
Right.
but what do you do when someone you love and someone you fully trusted, this man, asks for your help? It's very difficult to turn your back then. You have that's why cons are so difficult. I get it.
You just made several good points. Really, one interesting point, not about the money, was about this perception of security, right? It's not like, can I have money to go on a trip? It's my life is in danger, or I need this to get by. And so for people to put this into their own perspective, because I know this is a big message that you want to send out. First of all, you're not alone, right? Those people that are dealing with financial crime or romance scams. Romance scams are, I think it was the second largest internet crime in 2020 from the FBI study. I mean, it's a very popular scam, but it's somebody asking you, hey, I can't afford my rent next month. Can you help me with rent? Can you help me with security? It's not, I need money so I can go party. And so I like that perspective of you feel like you're helping a loved one, not that you're just donating, to some fun event.
Because we were looking at his old scams, like, because I recommend the podcast Making of the Swindler. That's on Spotify.
Okay.
It Felicity and Bernie, that was the producer and director on it. They went behind other things in Simon's life and how he became who he was. And you could see that he starts off small with forged checks, always having these grandiose things about himself. And then he goes into doing a bit more similar scams in Finland, where he was in jail for the scams. And then he saw, it's stupid to do 4 women in one country, then the police I will pick several all across Europe. And then he saw, if I mix in fear with love and make them fearful for me, I have a winning recipe here, for these kind of people. And of course, as I said, I know he put out a big net. That he went on tons of dates. And I have to say, this is not, I think romance scams is one bit of what these people did. But with the romance scam, they put up a big net, went on tons of dates. And of course, he found people like me, Pernilla and Eileen, these type of people that they see are caring. And it sounds bad to talk like that about yourself, but I have talked to other people that have been on dates with him and said, I got him immediately. And it just we're really he was stupid, and they would never have lent him in. If he would ask them for help, he wouldn't. So he finds people that are the way that, so he can manipulate us, that are wanting to help, that are loving, that are caring. And there are a lot of us out there, and these type of people, they will take advantage of you and really harshly, because we as people that are caring would never do this to anyone. So we aren't before that. And I have to say as well, another aspect is that I know it's stupid to say, but I am from Norway. We're a very trusting country. We trust governments, we trust police, we trust banks, we trust so much. I've never went through anything in my life of this type of scale, meeting people that would even taken, so it was in that aspect, or had a relationship where someone was very abusive to me or anything. So it was just the first time, and it went just grander than everything.
Yeah, well, I think one thing you just said is this kind of bias that most people have, believing people are being truthful and genuine. And what I want people that are listening, most of you that are listening are investigators. And there's research out there that shows how law enforcement and investigators often have this kind of lie bias, right? We assume people are being dishonest because every day of your life you're interacting with criminal activity. But most people have the opposite, right? Have a truth bias, as we assume the best in people, and we assume people are well-intentioned, and that's normal. But looking at it from two perspectives, I think is interesting. A lot of good questions coming in, and so I think from your perspective, so you met Simon on Tinder. My next question before we get into kind of some of the red flags and those types of things. I know your background probably more than most people on here, but if you can explain a little bit of kind of what your career was, what your expertise. Even when we got on the Zoom call, I almost screwed it up and didn't have Cecilie on here because the link was wrong, my fault. But she's an expert on this kind of stuff. And so what the reason I bring that up is when you meet somebody for the first time, especially online, what was your normal protocol of, let me do a little stalking, a little due diligence to make sure this person is who I think they were? So what did that look like first before you even kind of entered into a relationship with him?
I think like what most people do, you like he had his Instagram. That was not the Instagram he had when things got released, because he deleted that original one because of his enemies back in April 20. So it was a much larger and an Instagram with a lot more history. And he was tagged by other people like friends. And I always go on Instagram, I always go and tag pictures just to see that other people have tagged this person as well. And he has several people tagging him as my friend, Simon Levi from, so like it wasn't like an Instagram that like it looked that he was Simon Levi and it was this diamond person. And then it was more before I met up with him. It was just more his family, like what kind of, and then some of my friends were scared. They were more scared. I was more scared about going into a relationship with someone in the diamond business and those type of things, because it was so grand. So it wasn't about him not being who he said he was, because how many times do you actually, this is what I mean, this type of scam that I experienced, how many times have you heard about that someone has a fake bodyguard and fake private assistants and a fake business and everything's fake? You're in this hotel, you have people saying, hi Mr. Levi, and everything's fake. So it wasn't about me thinking that he was a fake person, but it was more about the fear of going into a relationship with someone that was more that he had Peter, and you really want to go into that kind of relationship. So that was more of it than him being fake, because it wasn't, as for someone asking if we ever met in person. And yes, we did. And he used a lot of those meetings to show himself up as the person he was supposed to be. Like I met friends of his, like that wasn't in the documentary, like dinners, like the private assistants we didn't talk about, like, so it's it's much more.
I think that's good context, right? Because a lot of people, when they think financial scam or crime, they think, well, I got an email that says my cousin's brother's nephew is, in prison and needs $30,000. Can you wire it to me? And people think, why would you do that? But this is completely different, right? You had proof of concept, right? You had interactions that continued to support what he said he was. The name seemed legitimate. He pointed to being kind of the heir of this diamond fortune, and the names made sense, right? I think I heard you speak a little bit about if you were to call like a credit card company or maybe a financial lender to get a loan, they had heard of him, like he had called already, or there was some type of confirmation that he was real, right? Or he not only was real, but he was legitimate and verified.
It's more just like this scam runs much deeper than what's in the documentary, and there are several layers to this when it comes to both the forgery of both passports and documentations from Melody Diamonds over several years. That we just have questions about how the banks could, we just have several questions. Don't want to mention the name, but there is some questions that are unanswered regarding approving documentation that these banks should have known by the point a lot of us sent them in were fake. Because this has been going on for several years, and the Levi family have been trying so much to stop him from doing this, but he has never been stopped. But yeah, what I meant is that it wasn't that I could call someone and said like, oh, I've been here with someone, but he knew so much about how things were working. For example, if it was doing a transfer, an international transfer back to me, he made it super big, like $500,000. He didn't owe me $500,000, but he knew then that if I called my bank, they would say, oh, it's such a large transfer to a private account. It's going to be stopped then in Hong Kong. It's going to be stopped here in the UK. Like there's no, and the same when he sent the check over to me, like they never said to me that it was fake, the check. That was not part of the documentary. That was really, he earned some time there. They didn't check if the check was real or not. They just said that we're not going to cash a check that's that amount to a private account. So he did a lot of he knew so much about how the system works to work in his advantage so he get more time. So if you called the bank and he said, well, it will take time, I promise you. And then you called the bank and they said, well, it will so he's a master, or the team, I have to say, and that's very important to say here as well. It's not him by himself. He has a team. He could never have done this without help of other people. And when he employed me at LOD Diamonds, he called someone on the phone that I could hear the voice, an American voice that he put on speaker, that he said he wanted to employ me and give her the salary and blah, blah, blah. And the person responded. So there are more people in this that you can't portray to be a CEO of a diamond company and then be by yourself.
You do it independently, right? Yeah, I think that again is important to give context for people as we are doing due diligence, but everything is checking every single box. There's no reason to have a doubt. When you look backwards, of course, hindsight's much easier.
Yeah, as I said, yeah, if you want to go into red flags and those type of things, you can always look back. But I'm trying as well to, when it comes to fraud, it will always, I want to change, we can try to prevent as much as possible, but I still want it to be if you first get defrauded, how do we meet people then?
Yeah,
because it will always happen. We can do as much due diligence as we want. People will still get defrauded.
Still gonna happen, right?
Unfortunately, yeah.
I'm going to put, as we carry on, just a link in the chat here. So if you guys missed that QR code earlier, and we've got some information on that link, so I'll give you a chance if you want to check that out. As you checked that out, you probably just realized I tricked some of you. So I'm going to put up another quick little poll question here and see how many of you, and I'll share, Cecilie, I'll share the answer with you in a second. How many of you either clicked that link or scanned the QR code earlier? All right, we got almost 50-50 split. Some of you don't want to admit to it because you're embarrassed. Imagine your embarrassment being portrayed to millions of people. All right, let me end this real quick. I'm just going to share this. I said free. I figured I'd have a little fun here because if you click the link, for those of you that didn't, as soon as you click the link or looked at the QR code, it brings you to a web page that says you've been swindled. And so we've got, and I only had it up for about 3 seconds, right? 34% of you said you clicked it. 7% of you don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. You didn't see the QR code. And then 59% at least claimed you didn't click it. Now, what's interesting, and the reason I bring this up and to talk about some of the, you mentioned red flags. Steven says we recognize you as a legit and verified source. Fine, right? A lot of you either maybe know me or know our brand or know our company, but that's all you really know. And if you put yourself into Cecilia's position, she felt like she had the same thing, right? You've got credibility, and you got, when I say brand, he's a close friend, if not a relationship for this period of time. I asked you to click a link because you were incentivized that it was free. Right. Imagine if I asked you to click something because it was to donate to a charity that would make sure that I could survive next week because I'm in danger, or a close friend of yours, or a loved one. James has my history, I guess. But when we get into kind of the investigation here, there's a lot of research that talks about how conning people work. And one of the kind of first steps is to ask somebody for a small favor first, right? Because if somebody, for example, if I'm going to ask you for $10 I see you just walking out of a store. If I ask you to hold the door open for me and you hold the door open, and then I ask you for $10, you're more likely to give it to me because you've already accepted one request from me of holding the door open. You're more likely to accept the next request. And so does that translate at all to kind of how this maybe progressed?
Yeah, God, is a perfect example. I remember when I went back to the WhatsApp history, because where did it start? How did it end up $200,000 in loans and this craziness? And then I heard back on the voice note where he asked me, and it was like, oh, my card's blocked and I don't know what to do. Do you have an American Express? We can connect them with mine. So, and then I write back to him, if I can just help you in a small way, you've been so nice to me, and that's how it started. And that's what I mean. They grab you. And my biggest sadness is how quickly I got that American Express Platinum card, how easy that was. They should do more about not giving out Platinum Express cards that easily. Because I don't mean to put blame, and I want everyone to know, it's like everyone is saying, oh, you blame the banks and you blame. I'm not saying that I blame them, but I mean that they're the professional part here. And to get a Platinum Express card without any documentation that quickly, can I get one of these?
Go on,
it doesn't work anymore. But it started off very small, and it was just going to be for a week, or a couple of weeks, and then it was done, and then the threats will be gone. So that's the thing. You already has the card, and then it's more things happening, all these kind of stuff in the documentary as well, when he had like created this theatrical around me where he made you scared for your own life and made you remove your Instagram. You're in it, you're his girlfriend. Imagine, like, you think your boyfriend is going to get killed. I know it sounds like a bad action and thriller, but that's what it felt at the time. And you do a lot when you're scared. So that's how he got it. And for me, the money wasn't worth anything. It's so fascinating as well. The money didn't mean anything. It was to keep him safe. And you can show that when I got like $200,000 in debt and I didn't care anymore. I did it without the knowing I would get it back, but the thought of that he might die, it sounds so bad, but I thought that he might be killed if I didn't do this for him, which sounds insane now, because of course.
But I think what you just said is it sounds like an action movie, but it's only because you've seen the end of it. Right at the time, you didn't know, and that's what's hard for people to put themselves in that perspective. I want to get to some of these kind of where did the money get used? A lot of good questions here, but as you know, when we've talked before, right, what we focus on a lot is how do we conduct an interview, right? How do you talk to victims and witnesses? And I think what's interesting to learn more about is when this tipped from, we got a problem here. Most people, I would imagine, if you're dating somebody and you realize that person's a fraud, they're cheating, something's going on, you find out from a friend, you find out from another loved one who saw something on Instagram or Facebook, whatever. You don't find out from American Express. So what was that like initial, and what did that actually look like when you first realized that there's a problem and now you're being talked to by somebody who has no idea about your personal life, and that's kind of invasive? What was that experience like?
Yeah, because I can reveal that kind of, because what happened with American Express was that I had given out my card, and you're not allowed to give out your card. So I know I already done something I shouldn't. I had sent in these documentation. So they had blocked my card at the end and said, we know you haven't been. And I was so scared that I, not even thinking about the fraud, I knew that I was in trouble here. So they had tried to already been in contact with me, but I was deadly scared of them. And I felt that I've done. So that's how it started. And at the end, that's why I reached out to them, because I was like, I need to know. Now I really know that something is seriously up. So I think by that point in time, when I felt it was almost like a relief. So I had 2 special security agents coming to my work. I needed my manager with me in the meeting.
Yeah.
Because they were scared for what I was going to do to myself, because I was totally distraught. But they were I have to say, there's a lot of things. I saw someone else have some questions about Amex that they knew about this guy. And yes, they did. It's the reason why they've been so quiet. And we will see in the future what happens, but it's a reason why Amex has been very quiet, and they haven't tried to get the money back from that I still owe them. But anyways, I have to say the 2 people that I met was really incredibly nice. They just wanted a picture of him, of course. And then one of them said that I have a daughter almost your age, and if someone did this to her, I would have killed him. And was really, no, maybe not killed him, sorry, but like really done. And I was like, and said, you have your job, because I was at my job, and I was feeling super stupid. And he said, this is his full-time job, and you should never feel to be blamed for what happened to you. So I had like my first interview with them, but I have to say, like my first investigative interview with them, but I have to say, I don't remember almost any of it. I remember they were showing me the names of a lot of the other women that they had, asked if I knew them, and I didn't know a single name. So they had like an old book of, it wasn't nothing digitally, it was in a book, I remember, and he'd written everything down, but just taking care of me. They told me not to report it yet, which I thought was really weird, but they told me not to report it in the UK because they were working on combining cases, and they were gonna like pull together the cases for a lot of people and then send it in to the UK police. And then I asked what I should do, and they said you can report it in Norway because that's where most of my loans were. So, but that kind of those hours really helped me, first of all, realize the severity of the situation. Like when two special security agents comes in 2 hours, like we're coming, you understand that this is not an ordinary scam. And having that kind of very almost fatherly like caring from them to see a human. And then I asked as well if I was in trouble with Amex, that was almost my first. I was so scared of going to jail or something, like I've given up my card, I've fake documents, like what have I done to myself? And they said, we're not going after you, we're after Simon. And I think meeting a bank like that at that point in time was crucial for me, because if I would have met a bank that was like, you're the criminal here,
Right.
Because I had done stuff I shouldn't have done. Of course, I know that.
Right.
I had really destroyed my life at that point.
Well, from there, then interactions with law enforcement was, I know we had talked a little about this before, was UK and in Norway, right? And maybe other jurisdictions. But you had mentioned to me a difference between how some investigators kind of handled this case versus others. And I thought an interesting point, and you can obviously elaborate on this better, but is how some investigators maybe even treated you like you were a suspect, where others almost helped you with mental health support as if you were in a victim of like relationship or spousal abuse. So what was that kind of difference like?
I think in Norway, I think the police don't have enough resources at all. I think maybe all police across investigators maybe can see the same thing, but I felt they just looked at it as a very ordinary, it sounds bad to say because I feel all fraud cases should be taken seriously, so it's not that, but looked at it like an ordinary, this was just a boyfriend and he just left you, but it really never existed, So it was over in 1.5 hours. And as you can see from documentary, it's very intricate, it's very complicated, it's cross jurisdiction, cross countries. It's like, what is this? Didn't ask for any evidence, and it got dropped after a month and was never properly prosecuted. I understand, but he was in Norway a bit and he did some stuff in Norway. So I would have wished for Norway to have done their due diligence and just done their research from their point of view. What did Simon Levive did in our country? He used my card in Norway as well. So I would have just wanted that to support the rest of the countries. And then here in the UK, I went there after I got a death threat. Like you could hear from the voice note, but I got another death threat as well in my email when I went back to work. That was really horrible, where he threatened my friend's family. And he wrote, we know where you are. We know your friend's family. And when you see we, you get really scared because then it's not only him. Reported, I'm so distraught, I'm crying, I'm bawling my eyes out. Amex is saying there's someone waiting for me. One of the guys at Amex, where I was like calling him, like shaking, I need to report it now, I can't wait anymore. No one was there to help me, so I was totally in panic. Then they take me in, but then when the woman who talks to me really realizes, she slows down everything and is really so amazing, takes the time to get all the flight numbers, like everything. I was there for 4 or 5 hours, I think, in that interview room, like totally drained, gave her the check, asked for like just a totally different, as I said as well, got me into like victim support here in the UK, which is an amazing organization that calls you afterwards, asks you if you feel safe, if you need, alarms, like what can they help you with, mental support, because they viewed me, as I said, that you were in a domestic abuse, that I would never have been in this relationship, and it was an abusive relationship in parts, so that was a completely different how I was treated. Later on, it wasn't that nice. We can talk about that as well. But I have to say that interview situation really, really, I think I was really lucky with both that and with the Amex at the start, that made me being taken very seriously as a victim, and the emotional impact. And really, like, I was like, oh yeah, I was abused. And like, I would never have been, like, the kind of mental toll that he put on you was really nice, just to have validated, not just the money being lost, because that's one thing, and you shouldn't, money's money.
Yeah. I think that's really important, especially for everybody that's listening, as most of you are interviewers, is recognizing this is not just about theft or fraud or vandalism or a crime. It's what's happening to the person in the room. What's the kind of mental health support maybe they might need afterwards. Or you mentioned earlier that you don't even it's just a blur to you what that first conversation was like, because it's a traumatic experience. You're getting some support here.
My mom is on.
That's super sweet. That's very.
Yeah.
Well, I was wondering this. I think I've heard you talk about this before, but I'm curious how much you think gender bias played a role in the way people perceive what happened, because and a lot of investigators that are listening might do investigations of sexual harassment and sexual assault, financial crime, everything in between. But too often what we see, if a man was the victim and the woman was a suspect, the woman must have been manipulative, right? That's the assumption. But when it's reversed, it seems like, well, it's the woman's fault because she should have known better. And that seems to be the assumption. The same with sexual assault and sexual harassment, is you see a lot of these biases based on who's the suspect and who's the victim. Does that seem consistent with kind of how you were made to feel at times, or have you heard that before?
Yeah, not maybe from police, like, directly. That's more the public right. Opinion. But there has been several really great articles being written about that, for example, just between just romance fraud and, for example, the difference between Simon Levive and Anna Delvey, like the two difference there, and how they've been treated and how we've been talked about, so yeah, and we've been mentioning this in a lot of the interviews, like, it reminds us so much of rape, like when a woman before, maybe some parts into Dutch society as well, why did she go to the after party, why did she wear that skirt,
Right.
And we've been mentioning, I was thinking about that as well, as when men get defrauded, for example, one type of fraud, men is like, that, not to be, I don't mean to be generalizing here, but
I brought it up, so it's okay.
No, but sometimes a man can go to a strip club and then he gets drugged, and then they use his card, which is horrible,
Right.
But then it's women that is doing that to him, evil woman that drugged him and take his money. So poor guy, he just wanted to have fun at a strip club, but no one is asking, why did you go to this? Or to that extent that I felt was more back in 2019. I think this documentary is a bit better, but still you get some parts of that. Yes, of course, I have felt gender and that part very strongly, like a bit of, like, like, as a woman as well, like slut shaming, just for being honest on a documentary. Someone, like, you have to be honest, about the amount of matches you have on Tinder, and how many years. But if a man would have said the same thing, like, no one would have batted an eye or thought that he was super cool, so
I think that's really good perspective. Yeah. Well, especially the reason we had this call is to enlighten investigators that even though people are thinking, yeah, they agree with you, that makes sense. When you go out tomorrow and you're conducting an investigation, are you remembering this, right? Are you understanding that these biases probably carry into a case tomorrow or in a week from now? And although this is I'm enjoying our conversation. Hopefully this is helpful and not just therapeutic, but hopefully sends a message. But the real goal of this is to impact change, right? We want investigators to be aware of what you went through. We want victims to feel comfortable. And so from a victim standpoint, what resources exist, or what do you wish existed, I guess? What would have made it easier for you as you or friends or family or whoever started to kind of realize something's up? What exists or what should exist to make it easier for victims to find support?
oh God, it's nothing. Or like I was more in Norway, you know, so
Yeah.
Norway is a small country, so I don't know for the US, so arrest me if it, I just, I just miss centers, a resource center for fraud victims that you can actually go to and get kind of these step-by-step help in different types of fraud. In Norway, we have a lot of for identity fraud, but my type of fraud where, as I said, where you take up the loans yourself, there's nothing. You know, I'm sorry, we can't help you with that. Even though sometimes that is even tougher for you mentally because you know that you've done something you shouldn't have done. So you blame yourself even more. So, and mental support doesn't, like you can get help, of course, you can get therapy, but for my part, peer support helped a lot. So if you are an investigator that has some previous fraud victims that would love, like I just wish that around the time I was for 6 months, I was by myself without any peer support or from someone that went through the same. Then I got a touch of Pernilla and that changed so much about having her with me. So I think those type of things, I don't know if that exists in the US. In the UK doesn't. Like when I was talking to the police here, they said I started my organization because I was missing that. And they said, if your organization, we would have sent everyone to you. Mm-hmm. So I think more the peer support and the mental aspect. In Norway, we have some help free, but in Norway, we don't have like free legal help. So I didn't get any free lawyer help in my case. And when you have a complicated case like mine, you need lawyers and you need to know what the laws are saying. Because I didn't even know about the law that I was trying to use to erase my debt. Not that I won through it, but I didn't even know about it. We as people, we don't know all the laws. Right. You've been defrauded. You don't know what you can use against the banks to say, okay, I use this law to say that I was not willingly, I didn't take up these loans willingly. I was pressured into doing that because that's what I felt in the end that I was.
Yeah, I think, and we'll wrap up here in a few minutes. We'll keep you all night over there in London. But you mentioned right, this kind of feeling of maybe guilt, and which makes it harder to kind of come forward when you feel like you own some of those decisions. I saw a survey recently. I think it was 71% of women had been sexually harassed in the workplace and not reported it. And one of the main reasons was the fear of shame or guilt, or was this partly my fault? So I think that resonates pretty clearly. But the second piece you just mentioned of, you even said, you're trying to figure out what law, right? That shouldn't be your job. And what's really difficult for your case is, it's multi-jurisdictional, right? We got a lot of countries involved, and a lot of the investigators on here are familiar with that, right? They might have an organized crime case that covers 7 different states across the US, or maybe international. So in your position, who is your, like, you find new information or you find something, and we don't have to go too far because I know a lot of the investigation's pending, but who do you call? Like, who's your, all right, something just happened. Do you have to figure out, well, what country did this happen in? Here's my contact there. Or is there, like, there's no sole source. So how do you do that? How do you organize it?
I think that I just been mainly, since most of my loans have been in Norway, that has been where most of my pain has been. Because as I said, a lot of the times, damn it, I don't have much. God damn it. Sorry. Wait a minute, people. This is so funny to me. I was like, I've just been so stressed here.
Our battery was going to die.
Yeah. Yes, my battery was going to die. And that would be like, I don't want to. Okay, sorry. What was the question again? I'm so sorry.
Multi-jurisdictional, and you said Norway would be most of your
case
there.
Yeah, so like, because most people care about the loans, and that's where I have had my lawyers in Norway. I couldn't afford a lawyer here in the UK as well. So that has been there. But the investigations of my crime has been the longest in the UK. So that's where my case got dropped in August 2020. So at least they tried for 2 years, but it got dropped in the end. Why? I got to know why it was dropped, that it was difficult to prove, and it was more serious with the company fraud than my fraud. I don't agree, but
yeah, I can see that though. And we got a comment here from David, which we see consistently is sometimes financial crime is so complicated that oftentimes investigators don't even understand, right? Most departments may not have resources for financial crime, or it goes to kind of a specialty team or maybe federally. But there's a lot out there that people just don't know. And when you again think about Simon, it's yes, you're one of the victims, but from what I read, it looked like maybe over 10 million ish the number. Have you heard that from a range of women?
Yeah, but it's more than just women,
Yeah.
you know, like as I said, this is this big company fraud here as well. But as I said, what's difficult about this case is that if you think about it, if you're a CEO or a business, like you run a business, how cool would it be for you to go out there and say, I got swindled by the Tinder swindler, when everyone is making fun of us for believing him? Is
Yeah.
how you talk about fraud victims. Is how I want to normalize that you can get defrauded, because the more people speaking up about it, I think that's why he was managing to do this for so many months and years, because people are first up scared of his death threats and scared of him, but they are ashamed, they don't want to speak up. So I think 10 million is not even, and he's still going on. We know that there were 10, 15 people in Germany at a hospital there that was defrauded in 2021.
Yeah.
So we just want to normalize it, because the more people who are actually going out there. And did I lose you now?
Oh, you're there.
No, sorry. Yeah. No, like I'm just saying, like the more people who are actually going and reporting to the police, the better it is in the end. So the police will know, because I have so many people who are sending me messages still to this day wondering, I've been defrauded, what shall I do?
What should I do? Well,
So everyone has that question. What shall I do?
Yeah. And you're figuring out still as you go. I mean, if anything, you're educating investigators on what to do next. I think as we wrap up here, a really good comment from, I'll say your name wrong, I'm sorry, Mayela. Public knowledge is power. Things like human trafficking, catfishing, these financial crimes are all part of society. Public information is available. And I think what's a good thing to kind of wrap up with is how powerful your message is to try to impact these cases going forward, not just for other victims to feel confident, to share their story and that they're not alone, but also for investigators to know how can they be better. So a couple of things that I took note of for interviewer and investigators, and Anthony says it right here, teaching investigators in this chat alone is impactful. But I heard things like empathy, right? Being empathetic and understanding where a person came from, spending the necessary time, follow up with a victim that you mentioned, like that consistent follow-up, because you don't even know, did a case get dropped? Is it still being investigated? Is it not? And being aware of these biases that we walk into a room with, I think is really important for investigators. But I want to give you kind of the open floor here for a couple things. One, if people do have ways to support, by the way, I know we got a lot of investigators, who knows who's listening. So if you have a way to help support, I know this is a daily fight for you to get some justice here for not just you.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm going to throw that out there.
You're doing.
But also anything else that you want to say, for you've got a world of interviewers, investigators listening to you. So any other message of how they can be better tomorrow than they were yesterday based off of your experience? Any lasting words for the group?
I think what I have at least always thought about, what, like, just imagine if it happened to your daughter or your wife or your brother or your son. If this would have happened, how would you have wanted to speak to them and help them, you know? And I think just having that layer of empathy, because a lot of times but I feel like most of the people I've spoken to were really good, but I understand the difficulties that you have in your daily life with, you know, resources, and it's so complicated. But I feel as long as you feel that you can say to them that wasn't their fault, the more they relax and it can open up and actually talk better. Because if you meet like a judgmental person, then at least you can open up a bit better if you meet that kind of empathy and that kind of kindness. You just need that when you're so low, because you're at the bottom.
Right.
you you really destroyed everything already, so you don't need like another person saying we beat ourselves up, we're our own worst critics. So I think, but I bet that you all are, but I think that has really helped me a lot of the times when we all have biases in different ways, you know, where none of us is perfect. You always have biases, and I'm always trying to take it back to, okay, take a step back. What would I felt? It was my family. So I think that's.
Yeah, I think that's a really good note. And what you just said is that a victim is or even a witness is probably at their lowest point by the time that they are in the conversation with an investigator. So be aware of all the stuff you went through before it even got to that point, and the fear you probably have walking in. I think that's really important. I should say we didn't really talk about him much because I don't think he's worth the time that you were, but Simon I know is out there, and who knows if he's listening, but it's an open invite. I'd be happy to interview him if he wants to discuss his involvement, and we'll see what he wants to commit to. But any interaction, or I know he's back out there still or again and doing his own, continuing to conduct some of these scams. So any concept feedback there?
I just think that everyone wants to talk to him, but remember that he is a narcissist and psychopath. He will never admit it. The main reasons why I have never wanted an explanation from him is that you will never get it. You'll never hear from Simon Levi why he's defrauding people, because he doesn't defraud people. He's a businessman in Bitcoin now. Right. So it just changes the ammo. I think he's a very interesting personality to actually dissect. I sent him a message in 2020 because he was having so many meetings with his lawyers.
Right.
And then I got back from him, "Phil, good luck. I know everything and see everything, and you have criminal charges against you in Greece. The only fraud is you." And then he said, "With those lies, you made me a superstar." So I understand that people want to hear him talk, but I think everyone will be very disappointed in actually what he has to say. I think it would be very fascinating, but I think you guys know more about narcissists and psychopaths maybe than me, with fraudsters and stuff like that. But I have given up, and I don't need him to say anything to give me like a sense of why he did what he did. I view him as someone with zero empathy, and he's a very self-absorbed, sick individual that sits by himself now in Israel and has no one. He does TikTok lives where yesterday he did a 2-hour TikTok live. So if you want to see him speak, then you can see him there. But he was drunk and by himself, and it pleasures me. I don't like to see people be sad, but it pleasures me to see him not doing well. And this is the way I could do it as a person. You shouldn't have to have a documentary to get justice that way, but that's what I needed to do to get him stopped. So at least he's now stuck in Israel, drinking wine by himself, having no family and no friends. And I think that's the best thing that came out of this, I think that's great. I understand that it could be a very fun interview, but I think you would be incredibly disheartened and frustrated if you would try to get him.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So you try. Simon, if you're out there, I know he's checking my socials all the time. So if he's on this call, like, just do it. But I think it's just scared.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I know, and this story is not about him, right? This is about how you helping kind of really change the world here from victims' perspective and how investigators handle this. So I know I don't even know what it's like, but having to share your story so many different times, and we've done a million different talks like this. So I really appreciate being vulnerable enough to share it. Hopefully that makes some other folks stronger to share the same. And I know for the people that are listening, that are investigators, know this makes them better interviewers tomorrow. So I appreciate your time and your vulnerability. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave, for having me as well. It's been a pleasure. And thank you, every investigator and everyone that that is doing this hard work, because I can't even understand how it must be for you to do this on a daily basis and hear all these stories. So thank you so much. And if I could help a little bit, I'm happy. So thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy your night. Next time we do it, I'll send you the right Zoom link, so there's no issue. And thank you to your mom. Thank you to your mom for hanging out with us too.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye. Bye.